It was a typical Monday morning in the bustling city of Chicago. The sky was overcast, and the chill of early autumn was in the air. 16-year-old Jake Thompson, a sophomore at Lincoln High School, hurried to catch the 7:30 a.m. bus. With his headphones on, Jake listened to his favorite band, lost in the rhythm, as he waited at the bus stop. The bus arrived, and Jake, along with a crowd of commuters, boarded. The bus was crowded as usual, with standing room only. Jake managed to find a spot near the middle, holding onto a pole for balance. The bus lurched forward, and Jake resumed his music, glancing occasionally at the other passengers. A few stops later, an older black woman, perhaps in her late 60s, boarded the bus. She looked tired, carrying several heavy grocery bags. She scanned the crowded bus for an empty seat, but found none. Jake noticed her struggle and immediately felt a pang of empathy. Without hesitation, he pulled out one of his earbuds and called out, "Ma'am, you can have my seat." The woman's eyes widened in surprise, a mix of gratitude and relief washing over her face. "Thank you, young man," she said warmly, as Jake offered her his seat. He stepped aside and helped her with her bags, placing them on the floor near her feet. As the bus continued its journey, Jake stood nearby, holding onto the overhead railing. He noticed a few passengers staring at him, some with approving nods, others with indifferent glances. Jake didn't care about the attention. He was just glad to help. The woman looked up at him with a smile. "You're a kind young man. Not everyone would do what you did. What's your name?" "Jake," he replied with a smile. "Jake Thompson." "Jake, you have a good heart. My name is Mrs. Washington. Thank you again." The rest of the bus ride passed without incident. When Jake reached his stop, he waved goodbye to Mrs. Washington and exited the bus, heading towards his school. He didn't think much about the encounter, chalking it up as a simple act of kindness. The next day, as Jake walked up to the school gates, he noticed a sleek black Mercedes-Benz parked conspicuously near the entrance. It was an unusual sight for Lincoln High, where most of the cars were older models driven by teachers or students' parents. Jake's curiosity was piqued, but he shrugged it off and continued towards the school building. As he approached, a well-dressed man stepped out of the Mercedes and called out, "Jake Thompson?" Jake stopped in his tracks, surprised. "Yes, that's me," he replied, his voice tinged with confusion. The man smiled warmly and extended his hand. "I'm Mr. Robinson, Mrs. Washington's son. She told me about your act of kindness on the bus yesterday. My mother doesn't always get the respect she deserves, and your gesture meant a lot to her. And to me." Jake shook his hand, still puzzled. "It was nothing, really. I just gave up my seat." Mr. Robinson chuckled. "It was more than that. You showed compassion and respect. My mother has had a tough time lately, and your kindness made a big difference. I wanted to personally thank you." Jake nodded, feeling a bit overwhelmed by the attention. "I'm glad I could help." Mr. Robinson's expression turned serious. "Jake, I'm not just here to thank you. My family believes in rewarding good deeds. I'd like to offer you something as a token of our appreciation." He gestured towards the Mercedes. "This car is yours for the day. You'll be driven to and from school in it, and there's a special surprise waiting for you inside." Jake's eyes widened in disbelief. "You're kidding, right?" Mr. Robinson shook his head. "No, I'm serious. Consider it a small thank you from my family." Jake hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Robinson. This is incredible." As they walked towards the car, Jake couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and disbelief. He had no idea what the day had in store for him, but he knew one thing for sure. His small act of kindness had led to something extraordinary. The driver opened the back door of the Mercedes for Jake, and as he slid into the plush leather seat, he noticed a neatly wrapped gift box on the seat beside him. Curiosity got the better of him, and he carefully untied the ribbon and lifted the lid. Inside, he found an envelope and a brand new laptop. Jake opened the envelope and read the letter inside. "Dear Jake, your kindness and respect for my mother touched our hearts deeply. In a world where such gestures are often overlooked, you stood out. We wanted to express our gratitude with a gift that could help you in your studies and future endeavors. Thank you for being a shining example of compassion. Sincerely, the Robinson family. Jake's eyes widened as he read the letter. He had always wanted a laptop to help with his schoolwork and pursue his interest in graphic design. This was more than he could have ever imagined. He carefully placed the letter back in the envelope and looked out the window, feeling a swell of gratitude and disbelief. The school day passed in a blur. Jake's friends were awestruck when they saw him arriving in the luxurious car, and rumors quickly spread about his unexpected benefactor. Jake, however, remained humble, deflecting the attention with a simple explanation. "I just did what anyone should do." At the end of the day, the Mercedes was waiting for him at the school entrance. The driver greeted him with a warm smile and opened the door. As they drove through the city streets, Jake couldn't help but reflect on how much his life had changed in just 24 hours. When they reached his home, Jake thanked the driver and stepped out of the car carrying the laptop and the letter. He entered the house, eager to tell his parents about the incredible events of the past 2 days. His mother, a nurse working double shifts, was in the kitchen preparing dinner, while his father, a mechanic, was reading the newspaper at the table. "Mom, Dad, you won't believe what happened," Jake began, recounting the story from the moment he offered his seat to Mrs. Washington to the gift he received from her son. His parents listened with wide eyes, clearly proud of their son. "That's amazing, Jake," his father said, clapping him on the back. "You did a good thing, and it came back to you in a big way. Remember, it's not about the reward, but about doing what's right." Jake nodded, understanding the wisdom in his father's words. "I know, Dad. I'm just happy I could help." That evening, as Jake sat in his room, setting up his new laptop, he received a text message from an unknown number. It read, "Hi, Jake. This is Mrs. Washington. I just wanted to thank you again for your kindness. It's young people like you who give me hope for the future. If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to reach out." Jake smiled as he read the message, feeling a deep sense of connection and community. He replied with a heartfelt thank you and promised to stay in touch. Over the next few weeks, Jake's story spread throughout the school and the neighborhood. It wasn't long before a local news station picked up the story, wanting to feature Jake and his act of kindness. When the reporter asked him what he had learned from the experience, Jake replied thoughtfully, "I learned that even the smallest acts of kindness can have a big impact. You never know what someone else is going through, and sometimes all it takes is a little compassion to make a difference. I'm just glad I could help." As the camera crew packed up and left, Jake felt a sense of fulfillment. His simple act of kindness had not only changed his life, but had also inspired others to be more compassionate. And in a world that often seemed harsh and divided, that was something truly worth celebrating. Jake continued to stay in touch with Mrs. Washington, visiting her occasionally and helping her with groceries or yard work. She became like a grandmother to him, sharing stories of her life and offering wisdom and guidance. One day, while helping her with some garden work, Mrs. Washington revealed a surprise of her own. "Jake, there's something I want to show you," she said, leading him into her house. She opened a drawer and pulled out a framed photograph of a young boy standing proudly beside an old car. "That's my son, Jonathan, when he was about your age," she explained, her eyes filled with warmth. "He grew up to be a successful businessman, but he never forgot where he came from. Your kindness reminded me of him when he was young. You have a bright future ahead, Jake. Keep being the wonderful person you are." As Jake looked at the photo, he felt a deep sense of connection and purpose. He knew that his friendship with Mrs. Washington was a gift far greater than any material reward. It was a reminder of the power of kindness and the lasting impact it could have on people's lives. And so, Jake's journey continued, guided by the lessons of compassion, respect, and the belief that every small act of kindness could change the world, one person at a time. Jake's kind act led to a great experience. The next day, Jake was picked up by a Mercedes and got a new laptop from Mrs. Washington's son. Jake realized how much his small gesture had meant to others. His story spread and earned him respect. Jake stayed humble and kept visiting Mrs. Washington, They became close. She was his mentor and a source of wisdom. Jake learned that small acts of kindness can create positive change. This stayed with him, guiding his actions. From then on, Jake knew that being kind was a way of life that could bring unexpected blessings and meaningful connections. Jake's story shows that kindness can overcome challenges.